네, 다음 발표 이어가겠습니다. 다음은 쿠바 국립과학연구센터 사라이 멘도사 까스타뇨 연구개발국장님이 자연에서 찾은 물질, 쿠바산 폴리코사놀이라는 주제로 발표를 하겠습니다. 이번 발표는 발표 자료가 비공개인 관계로 책자가 아닌 앞에 나올 화면을 참고해 주시면 감사하겠습니다. 네, 연구개발국장님을 무대 위로 모시겠습니다. 큰 박수 부탁드립니다.
Good afternoon. I would like to thank the organizers of this event for the invitation. My name is Sarahi Mendoza. I am the Director of Research and Development of the National Center for Scientific Research in Cuba, a center that has, among other aspects, the mission of developing products and services for health. And one of these products, in fact, the main product of our center is policosanol, and I will be talking about it during this afternoon. First, I would like to start by showing you this slide. The world is changing. There is a sustainable change in the age structure of the world population. In 1950, there were 2.5 billion people on the planet. Now, there are more than 8 billion. And for the end of the century, the United Nations expects around 10.4 billion people on the planet. This visualization of the population pyramid allows us to understand this enormous global transformation. The width represents the size of a population of a given age, women on the right and men on the left. If we now compare the base of the pyramid in 2018 with the projection for 2100, you will see that there will be fewer children born for the end of the century than today. It means that the base of the future population pyramid is narrower. According to WHO, according to WHO, there were 727 million people over 65 of age in 2020. It is around 9.3% of the global population. And this number, this percent, will increase to around 16% in 2050. That is, that people are living longer lives, and the number and proportion of older people are rapidly increasing numbers. In Cuba, in my country, in this context, they are around 2.5 million people over 60 years of age. And this number increases every year. According to the Cuban Ministry of Health, the percent of people over 60 years of age has increased from 17.9% in 2011 to 21.6% in 2021. But the percent of children born has not grown. On the contrary, the birth rate has decreased over these years. But at the same time, the life expectancy is higher than in previous year. Then why is this so? Well, it is hard to establish a connection between only one cause and this phenomenon. But we think that the conception of our health system is closely with this fact. Our health system is organized in 3 levels of attention, being the primary health level of attention, the cornerstone of the whole system, and it is also organized in programs of health. And among these programs, the family doctor and nurse team program allows not only the universal coverage, but also the care of the individuals, their family, and the community. And also in Cuba, the promotion of health is very strong. In fact, the Ministry of Health in Cuba is one with the most present in the Cuban TV with health promotion spots and health recommendation, because it is important, of course, to live longer, but it's important to do it with a physical well-being. It means healthy as part of a good quality of life. Quality of life is a very wide concept that includes a lot of conditions that individuals should enjoy to satisfy their own needs. And among these conditions, health is one of the most important. I think that it is the most important condition, but it's also one condition that the person can change, can improve, can change for better, can improve. And in a context of an aging population, the prevention of age-related disease is very important for a good health. And as part of this prevention, the prevention of this disease must include the reduction of some modifiable risk factors, but also change in lifestyles. And it is something very easy to say, but very hard to do. To stop smoking, to change the diet, to do some exercise is very hard. But something that is easier and can help to modify these risk factors, to incorporate in our diet some functional food that can positively impact in these modifiable risk factors, being safe and well tolerated, and this is the way to prepare our body for a healthy aging. Then, after this necessary introduction, I will talk now about policosanol. Well, in the late 80s, a research team from the National Center on Scientific Research was searching natural products with potential medicinal interest, being focused on some byproducts of the major Cuban industries, like sugarcane industry. And then they isolated a mixture of 8 higher primary aliphatic alcohols. They isolate the mixture from the refined sugarcane wax, from the leaves and the stems of the plant. And they named this mixture policosanol, which means more than one alcohol. And in the mixture, the concentration of each alcohol and the total content of alcohols were between very reproducible limits from batch to batch. After this, an intensive experimental pharmacology research started. As a result of this, the following findings were seen on different animal species. Dose-dependent cholesterol-lowering effects, some pleiotropic effects such as antiplatelet effects, anti-ischemic effects, antithrombosis effect, inhibition of COX-1 enzyme activity, antioxidant effects, reduction of atherosclerotic plaques in models of spontaneous and experimentally induced atherosclerosis, and reduction of smooth muscle cells. Some other experiments, in vitro and in vivo experiments conducted by Cuban and foreign researchers from the United States and from China, conducted over these years, found that policosanol inhibits cholesterol synthesis but does not directly inhibit the enzyme HMG-CoA reductase, which is the pacemaker enzyme in the route of synthesis of cholesterol. The policosanol indirectly inhibits this enzyme through a regulatory mechanism that involves the activation by phosphorylation of the AMP kinase. And also, policosanol inhibits, decrease the gene expression of the enzyme and downregulate the transcription of the enzyme, but does not act on the degradation of the enzyme. And at the same time, policosanol treatment increased LDL receptor processing and activity and enhance LDL catabolism through the receptors-mediated pathway. This flowchart summarizes the mechanism of action of policosanol. Here is the enzyme, and policosanol exerts a modulatory inhibition on the pacemaker enzyme activity through, as already said, through the activation of the AMP kinase enzyme. So policosanol activates the AMP kinase so that the enzyme, the reductase, passes from its active to its inactive form, decreasing cholesterol synthesis. Also, policosanol increases the amount of phosphorylated calmodulin kinase-dependent kinase that can directly activate AMP kinase. The activation of the AMP kinase by policosanol requires peroxisomal metabolism. And in the liver, the treatment as a compensatory mechanism increase the number of LDL receptors, and that way increase plasma LDL clearance and reduce the levels of circulating LDL. As part of the preclinical evaluation of policosanol, some experimental toxicology studies were done, demonstrating that policosanol, the safety. Some studies of general toxicity were done in schemes of a single and repeated dose of treatment, some studies of genotoxicity, and two studies on long-term carcinogenicity, and some studies in fetal and reproductive toxicity of policosanol. In all these studies, there were no toxicity related with the treatment with policosanol. All the effects of policosanol demonstrated in animal models were corroborated in clinical trials, and intensive clinical trial research has been conducted in Cuba and overseas centers, with more than 100 of clinical trials conducted from 1992 up to date. And as a result of this, the following findings were seen in humans. Dose-dependent lipid-modulating effects characterized by decreases on total cholesterol, LDL cholesterol, and modest to moderate increases on HDL cholesterol, antiplatelet effects, antioxidant effects, improvement on intermediate claudication distances, and improvement on neurological recovery after ischemic stroke. In consequence, many papers on policosanol have been published, being the Cuban product with more publications, including the clinical ones. You can see in the slide, policosanol has more than 200 of papers, and around 70% of them in Journal of High Impact Factor. The clinical trials of policosanol have included several population subsets, including subjects with normal to borderline cholesterol values and patients with high total cholesterol and LDL cholesterol values, with or and without other risk factors like diabetic patients, for example. And other studies have included some special risky populations, such as patients with intermediate claudication and patients who had suffered an ischemic stroke. Most studies have had a randomized double-blind design, some being placebo-controlled or of short and long-term duration, double-blind comparative studies of long-term duration, and some studies have been open and uncontrolled, short or long-term duration. The primary outcomes depends on the main objective of each study. Most studies conducted with policosanol have been done in order to evaluate the effects of policosanol on blood lipids. And in these studies, the primary outcome has been the reductions on LDL cholesterol versus placebo and some other comparators. In studies on platelet aggregation, the primary outcomes have been the arachidonic acid or ATP-induced aggregation. In patients with intermediate claudication, the primary outcomes have been the claudication distances, and in studies on post-stroke cases, the neurological recovery of the cases. Some meta-analyses have been carried out with all these clinical studies of policosanol. This is a little old, but it's very interesting because in these studies, the effects of some studies using policosanol were compared with some studies using plant sterols and stanols, and the results corroborated the effects of policosanol on blood lipids, but also demonstrate that the effects of policosanol were better than those of plant stanols and sterols. This is other meta-analysis done, carried out with some randomized controlled clinical trials of policosanol, and at the end, the authors conclude that the published results supported the lipid-lowering effects and safety of policosanol. And is that the clinical results of policosanol have been very similar in all the studies conducted in different population subsets. The effects on blood lipids and the prevention of LDL oxidation and the prevention of the induced platelet aggregation have been very similar in all the studies. And I want only mention some particular effects. For example, in patients with multiple risk factors, policosanol also reduced serious events versus placebo. And in patients with post-ischemic stroke, in post-ischemic stroke patients, the treatment improves neurological recovery and reduces recurrent events. And in patients with intermittent claudication, the treatment increases walking distance, increases the arm brachial index, and also improves lower limb symptoms and health perception and physical activity. In all these studies demonstrate the security, that the treatment was safe and well tolerated. There were no safety concerns, even in cases with liver dysfunction. More recent studies have been conducted in order to evaluate the effects of policosanol on HDL functionality, and trying to find out why does policosanol increase HDL. And recent evidence showed, obtained from Professor Shaw here present, and his team showed that policosanol inhibits CTP activity, increase PON1 activity, and exerts anti-glycation effects. In that way, policosanol increases the quantity, but also the functionality of HDL. And we already here know that HDL is involved in a lot of processes in the human body, and we think that this effect of policosanol on HDL could be related, at least in part with its efficacy and with its pleiotropic beneficial effects. Then finally, we have a natural product, which is policosanol, that can help to control blood lipids and also have some beneficial pleiotropic effects in animal models, and that the effects were corroborated in clinical trial, which is the main important part. The clinical evidence is the most important, being safe and well tolerated, and then it is the treatment positive impact on quality of life, mainly in this patient who has concomitant risk of risk factors, vascular risk factors, and we strongly recommend the use of policosanol for healthy aging. And thank you very much.